Bruce Feldman of Fox Sports and also The Athletic back here on the Rich Eisen Show. How you doing, Bruce?
I'm doing well, Rich. Good to be on with you.
So where do things stand as we're chatting? Best you could tell right now.
At this point yesterday, Rich, I thought it was probably a 25% chance that Urban Meyer was done in Ohio State. And by mid-afternoon yesterday, I thought it was 50-50. And this morning, waking up, I think there's probably a 75% chance that he's coached the last game. But, the text messages of Urban Meyer's wife, Shelley Meyer, to the ex-receivers coach's wife are pretty damning. And the question is, and this is the one thing I kind of looked at and said, okay, this may be the one thing that could save Urban Meyer and Ohio State if they're keeping him, would be you go back to the Big Ten Media Days 2 weeks ago in Chicago, and Urban Meyer was pressed upon kind of what did he know as it related to Zach Smith, because they had fired him the night before. And he talked about in 2009 when they were both at Florida that he heard about an incident and he told his boss, because that's what you're supposed to do. And then he proceeded to talk about how his wife and he got involved. There was some counseling and different things that they were trying to help the young couple with. But what struck me looking back is, especially in light of all this, that points in direction of Urban Meyer knowing something that happened of an incident or multiple incidents in 2015 was, why did Urban Meyer tell his boss, presumably Florida AD Jeremy Foley, in 2009, and he wouldn't have done anything in 2015 if he in fact knew? Because keep in mind, what happened in that 6-year gap was the Jerry Sandusky scandal at Penn State. And what that did was that made every coach, if they weren't already very aware that when it comes to Title IX and the Clery Act, there is a direct, whether you believe this person on your staff is guilty of it or not, or this player is guilty of it or not, you got to run it up to the proper channels to get it investigated. They do it, not you. And so why would he not have done that? And perhaps he did do it, contrary to what it sounds like he said 2 weeks ago.
Okay, so I'm trying to follow this here because you're right. I mean, he did in 2009 say, "Hey, I did the right thing," and we reported it. And so in 2015, unlike the 2009 incident, Courtney Smith did not go to the police. There was no file of a charge or anything like that. So to know something was going on comes from the text exchange between Courtney and Urban Meyer's wife that came to light yesterday in the Brett McMurphy reporting. So the question is it possible in your mind that Urban Meyer somehow, some way, despite Courtney having this text exchange with his wife, and then all the other wives, according to Courtney, knowing what was going on, that this was a conversation amongst the wives of all the coaching staff of Ohio State, that Urban Meyer was still in the dark?
Rich, it's technically possible he was still in the dark of that. The part where I'm skeptical of that side of it would be, he told us in the media at that press conference, he was the one who brought this part up, that he and Shelley got involved and talked about it. And this wasn't just Urban Meyer with he had some assistants come and go. This was the grandson of his mentor, the late Earl Bruce. This was a guy who when he was a first-time head coach at Bowling Green, this was a walk-on who played for him. This was the guy he brought with him to Florida. So if he's talking about he and his wife had already had these conversations with Zach Smith and his wife, and Shelley Meyer, according to those texts that Brett McMurphy had reported on, if Shelley Meyer had said, he scares me in regard to Zach Smith, it seems very odd that she wouldn't have followed up with her husband. And she's a nurse, by the way. It's not, I think that adds another layer of context.
Well, she's an employee of the school in the nursing department.
Yeah, it just
the nursing school, right, Bruce?
Yeah, it seems odd that she would have withheld some of those details that the football operations wife, would know and be invested in, and that they would keep that from Urban Meyer. It just seems really strange. And that's why, now look, again, I go back to this other point. It's entirely possible that Urban Meyer told his boss, Gene Smith, the AD, when he heard some of this, and he thought, there were no charges brought. Police did look into, there was a story, I guess, in the in the Cleveland Plain Dealer on their website that they had found, I want to say 9 instances that were reported between, over a 6-year stretch. And it's entirely possible Urban Meyer said, well, I told my bosses, they looked into it. There was nothing there. So when I say there was nothing, maybe in his head, that's how he's seeing it. But right now, Urban Meyer's obviously not commenting short of the statement that he gave yesterday.
Right. And if he did, in fact, kick it up the chain of command and then just didn't want to throw his athletic director under the bus in front of the media in the Big Ten media group and just decided to say, I've said all I'm required to say about it, and that's it, then he's sitting at home right now stewing, saying everybody's thinking that I looked the other way, but I actually kicked it up the chain. So, wow. I mean, if that's the case, then, I mean, this could blow everything up, Bruce.
It's strange. I mean, look, we're both in the media. I would say this. When you go through this process and they have somebody saying, okay, you're on paid leave, especially such a high-profile figure, and the story has as much visibility as it does. And also, by the way, they're about to go report to camp, within hours. So it's not like this is happening in the middle of the summer. You wonder, the longer this happens, I'm watching TV at our former network yesterday, and I'm seeing all the college football people weighing in on this.
Yeah.
The more people talk about it, if there is some level of a plausible explanation like that, it's like this stuff almost becomes like calcified. Like everybody's now just believe that this is he's dead man walking. And look, maybe that's the case. Maybe he has coached his last game. We don't know. But I think the more time is going to pass between this, it's like I'd be curious, what's going to be if there is some kind of proof that he did have those conversations. What then? He's obviously got to explain the comments he then made in Chicago at Big Ten Media Days. But it's a really curious dynamic that is kind of unfolding because Ohio State, within the hour just announced that practices are closed to the media now and all the players and coaches are going to be off limits at least until Monday till they sort some of this out. There's a lot of stuff going on. And also you wonder, why didn't Ohio State, in the wake of, Smith's arrest a month ago, why didn't they start the investigation then? Why didn't even they start the investigation after Big Ten Media Days? This inquiry, seems to have just started, just within the last 24 hours. I mean, why didn't they start that a lot sooner?
Well, we're less than a month from the beginning of the season for everybody, Bruce. Last one for you before I let you go. What is the biggest story we're not talking about then? Because this is taking up all the oxygen in the college football room. Is it Alabama starting quarterback? What do you think needs to be front and center otherwise?
Yeah, I would say it's when you have a national title team with an SEC Player of the Year. How does Nick Saban manage it? I mean, look, I don't think anyone's going to feel sorry for Nick Saban. He's got 2 talented quarterbacks, and quite honestly, he's got a pretty suspect schedule this year. I don't think anybody's going to push them too hard until they get into November. So, I mean, that's certainly a big storyline. But that's gotten all blown out of the water because you have what I think most people would consider the second best coach in college football. And right now his career is in jeopardy, and in large part because of all the, because he basically leaned on and trusted a guy who, whether he knew he was a domestic abuser or not from the start, I mean, this was a guy who had very shaky character, and it kind of goes back to all the stuff at Florida, where all his problems came from giving shaky character guys second and third and fourth chances. This time it wasn't a player. It's an assistant coach where it seems to be leading to all his problems now.
Bruce, appreciate the time. Thanks very much. We'll chat again soon.
Always a pleasure, Rich.
You got it. That's Bruce Feldman of Fox Sports. Busy Bee.
The Rich Eisen Show, weekdays at noon Eastern on Audience.